Hello, everyone. I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to join, and we'll get back to you shortly. So welcome to everyone who's joined already. I'm looking forward to sharing some useful insights with you today. So speak to you in a couple of minutes. So hello and welcome to everyone again who's already joined. I'll give a few more minutes for everyone else to join, set up, maybe unpack their lunches at their desks, and we'll get back to you shortly and we'll share with you some insights on today's topic, and we'll let our two speakers fill you in. So just letting everyone have the opportunity to join. We'll get back to you shortly, just around 2 to 3 minutes. So everyone who's the worm, well done on you guys. Speak to you shortly. All right. So hello and welcome to everyone who has joined us here today. We're very excited to be sharing some useful insights with you in our webinar. We have two great speakers who are going to share some info on social media listening. Our two great speakers are the experts. I will let them each briefly introduce themselves, but first, let me quickly share with you what we are going to be talking about today. Before we start, a quick intro to myself. My name is Dewey Jorger. I'm head of business development for the DataWords Group based in Zurich, Switzerland. In addition to Zurich, we also have an office in Geneva, led by my colleague Eric Leroy, VP of DataWords Group, Switzerland. Today, I will be your moderator. and our webinar is scheduled for approximately 45 minutes with a Q&A session until the full hour. You can write your questions just here in the questions box to my left, on your right. The questions are totally anonymous, only I can see them. Collect them, pass them on to our speakers for the end of the session, and I'll allow our speakers to answer them for you in the dedicated Q&A session of today's webinar. So we'll jump right into it. Our webinar today is about leveraging social data in the financial sector. We have partnered up with Vankson, also part of the DataWords group, as well as Talkwalker, a social media management tool which gives you insight on any given search term. I'll let Damien tell you more about that. But first of all, let me introduce to you Vanessa Diemer. She's our social listening director at Vankson. Vanessa, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction, Devi. I'm glad to co-host this webinar today with you and Damien. To introduce myself in a few words, I'm, as you already said it, in charge of the social listening department at Vankson, composed of a dozen social data intelligence experts. And during my 10 years experience here, I've held several positions, the latest being strategic planner in our consulting team. And my main mission is to support companies from different industries, including finance, of course, in defining and optimizing their digital strategy by capitalizing on social data insights. And to do so, however, we need platforms like Talkwalker, and that is why Damien is already present today.
Thank you very much, Vanessa and Dewi, and hello everyone. So I'm Damien. I work in the customer success management team in Talkwalker, and I'm very glad to represent the company today. I manage some of our strategic accounts, mainly in France, in Spain, and most of my clients are in the financial and telecommunication industries. So I just ensure that they get the most out of the platform. So if you have any question, I remain at your disposal.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Damien. I guess without keeping the suspense too high for everyone, I'll hand over the virtual mic to both of you. Again, dear guests, dear attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to stick them into the questions section just here, and I'll gather them for you, pass them on to our speakers, and I'll give them the opportunity to answer your questions at the end of our session. Enjoy our webinar, enjoy your lunch, and see you after our talk.
Thank you very much, Devi. Let's move to a quick introduction to the subject. With the rise of challenges like neobanks and fintechs, the financial sector has become more competitive than ever. It's not a surprise to all of you. Here you have two maps on the screen, one for Switzerland and one for Luxembourg, listing all the fintechs and startups in the finance industry. So as an actor in this increasingly crowded industry, you're in fact constantly trying to keep up with this fast-paced landscape, be it in terms of technological changes, corporate social responsibility, but of course also customer needs and expectations, which are changing really quickly. In fact, there has been a real strategic switch. Customer centricity has become the new norm, partly driven by the data generation and analysis ability created by social media. So within this context, how do we support our clients in the finance industry in making more informed and faster decisions? So during this webinar, we wanted to feature 5 use cases which will give you a better overview of the different ways you can take advantage of social data, starting with a first pillar, the monitoring of your brand reputation. So Reputation Watch or brand monitoring, there are several ways to sell it, is the process of tracking your brand's mentions across different channels. So as you know, There are more ways than ever for your audience, and by saying audience, I don't mean only customers, but also journalists, activists, your peers, investors, etc., to talk about you. The first use case I would like to feature is a defensive approach, and we will talk about brand protection. As you know, putting your brand online, which is currently unavoidable in the age of social media, opens it up to attacks, makes it vulnerable. So with countless ways for brand abusers to hit you, diligence is really essential. You need to protect your online reputation, and that task is not a piece of cake. In a world that is always online, it's easy to miss a question, a mention, complaints, or negative review. So every unanswered question or remark could really damage your online reputation. So the question here is, how do you protect your company's reputation and make sure to be proactive in a crisis situation? Actually, the answer is quite simple. You have to listen. So let's move to the first use case, which is our common client, which is a banking group with an international footprint. The group and its many subsidiaries are mentioned between 3,000 to 4,000 times a day by journalists, activists, key opinion leaders, of course also customers, which are commenting on its different activities, retail banking, corporate and institutional banking, fund management, etc. So within this context, it was really mandatory for the group to be able to track all the mentions, both online and offline, for malicious threats against the group's reputation. Damien, maybe you could outline the solution we put in place for our client to follow its reputation and protect his brand.
Yes, of course. So yeah, just maybe to start and give you a quick idea of what we are able to do and what represent content today. We cover 200 million websites around the world, and we collect billions of publications every day. So how can we protect the brand effectively and be proactive in a crisis situation? First, we have a strong AI-powered sentiment analysis, which is based on a combination of some advanced techniques of deep learning, NLP, machine learning, and all of these techniques allow us to detect negative mention in real time, which is very important for the bank. We also have the ability to create customizable source panels, and it allows us to monitor lists of relevant sources and apply them to the results. So in that examples, we can focus on mentions only from specific profiles, such as journalists, activists, NGOs, and we can build new profiles according to the evolution of the market. So these two features, the sentiment and the source panels, help the bank to detect sensitive content from key opinion leaders, and it allows them to be proactive in their community management. And last information for this use case. Once we detect a sensitive content, we also can choose the trigger that is the most relevant for the customer. So in that case, we mix different kind of triggers to notify the bank. We have some alerts in real time for the most sensitive topics, but we also have notification when the volume of conversation for some key topics are increasing unusually. And so at the end, how they receive the information, we have different kind of customizable deliverables. We can send them by email or through messaging apps, and it allows the client to receive the information at the right time and also through the best device. So this is how we manage to deal with the protection of the bank.
And in fact, in order to avoid spamming too much our clients, we also work and double check all these alerts, and we analyze them in more depth. So we analyze the situation, and we also write customized alerts depending also on the severity or the criticity of the mentions. Together with the clients, we also define different mailing lists so that actually nobody is being spammed, and that everybody gets the right information at the right time through the right mean, depending on their position, of course, within the group. So here is just one example of an alert sent by email. So as you can see, it contains all the relevant details, like the analysis of the situation, the description of the source and its influence. Is it a journalist, an industry expert, an ordinary user with a small community? The detail of the speech, the evolution of its virality, and of course also recommendations for actions. So what are the benefits of these daily monitoring and brand protection? Of course, they're quite straightforward. Have a good visibility of all the mentions around your brand, especially the negative ones, which are of course the most harmful. Thanks to that, you can take easily action, respond to certain mentions, or sometimes actually taking action is doing nothing. And hence the monitoring, the active community management will help nurture a positive online presence. However, you don't have to fall into the trap of thinking that brand protection is done in isolation. In fact, and it's important to combine it with brand performance measurement in order to be able to position yourself as a brand. So let's move to the second and third use case we would like to present. The question here is, of course, do you know your strengths and weaknesses? Do you know what's your current brand image? How is your brand image evolving depending on your actions? In a question, how do you measure your brand health? Here again, the answer is quite simple. You have to analyze and you have to benchmark. To give you another example, let's talk about another client in the banking industry. Our client is one of the major European banks and benefits from a good brand awareness. However, as you know, it's not all about awareness, it's also about reputation. The bank wanted to benefit from a regular analysis of its brand health and perception. Maybe Damien, could you explain to our audience what kind of metrics we can get from Talkwalker to understand how a brand is perceived and positioned compared to its competitors?
Sure. So Talkwalker allows you to understand and assess your brand health thanks to quite a wide range of metrics. So first, of course, we have quantitative metrics, number of mention, engagement, reach, interaction rate, which are quite classic, let's say. And it allows the bank to quickly understand what is going on and what engages the audience. However, we also have qualitative indicators when the quantitative part analysis is not, it's just not enough to understand what is happening on your market. So, for example, we have what is called the net sentiment that makes possible to compare the perception that the bank customers have of the brand compared to their main competitors in their market. So it can be global, it can be regional, it can be on specific market. We can apply it for products and so on. And so the sentiment in Talkwalker is assigned to each result and is provided by our AI. On top of sentiment analysis, we also have a strong semantic analysis to catch what is being said and really understand the health of the brand on social media and web. And last but not least, if it's not enough to have this metric that we have by default on Talkwalker, we also have the ability to build for our customers their very own performance or impact metrics. In that case, we created in collaboration with Vincennes and the customer, and through a feature called Scoring Engine, a tailored reputation score. And this reputation score is based on a different mix of sentiment metrics, engagement, and reach. So we have all the flexibility to have every KPI that can be impactful for the client.
And in fact, all these information, all these metrics are used in a dedicated and customized report that we defined with our client. So here you can see an extract of the monthly report that we send out to a mailing list, including the executive committee of the bank. So as you can see, we follow the index for all the main competitors on different dimensions. Here on the screen, it's for France, but we do it also for Europe and worldwide. We analyze the exposure, but also the sentiment, as already said by Damien, since the one is actually nothing without the other, or at least it doesn't really make sense if you don't analyze both together. We also identify the different peaks, analyze the situations, and this is really done on a regular basis. Here it's monthly, but of course it can be completely dimensional. You can have it on a weekly basis or on a quarterly basis. But we also actually are able to deliver more punctual analysis on specific events, which leads us actually to our third use case, event and sponsorship performance analysis. So here again, our client in the finance industry is an actor who has a strong sponsorship history and spends a lot of money to be associated with sports, culture, but also for its participation in major industry events. Hence, the sponsorship team needs to prove the value of these sponsorships. How much is my logo and my brand shared online during the event? How many people are seeing my sponsor image? Which publications and accounts are the most influential? Well, a lot of questions coming from the team to prove actually the value of the sponsorships. So Damien, maybe you could talk about TalkWalker's features, which are interesting in this case, talking about specifically image and video recognition.
Yes, it's very interesting technology, especially with TalkWalker. So we talked before about the use of our sentiment and our KPIs to analyze conversation, but today this sides quite a huge amount of data, and probably you also do it, but more and more we post a lot of images and videos. And so a few years ago, we built a technology to detect the use of a logo in social media and web. And in 2018, we built a new technology also to detect the use of logo in videos. So what we are doing now, we have a big visual analytics database with more than 30,000 brands, and every day we analyze 100 million images and 50 million videos. And so with Vincennes, when the bank sponsor an event, we want to be sure to cover all the conversation mentioning the client, but also using his logo, because it also has a strong impact on the brand reputation. So this technology allows us to have the full picture and use afterwards our quantitative and qualitative KPIs that we mentioned before, engagement, reach, and so on, to effectively measure the impact of their communication effort. Maybe just to give a very quick example, which is very recent, but as you may know, Accor is the main sponsor of the PhD. And so when PSG recruited Messi, without doing anything new, Accor generated billions of views in a few days. So by having this technology, it also allows any brand, but especially the banks that are big sponsors for big events, to really understand what is the impact of their campaigns on their brand image. And so again, we can share all this information thanks to our tailor-made reports that we build with Vincennes.
In fact, here you can also see an example of an ad hoc report we defined together with a talk worker and our client, of course, to be sure that we answer its objective. What are the metrics that need to be featured? What is the global performance of the event? The presence of their brand during the event with and without the logo, the share of voice, of course, compared to the other sponsors. So really each element within the report has been validated with our client beforehand and is presented to the team afterwards once the analysis has been done. So what are the benefits of the brand's health tracking and competitive benchmark? First of all, you can assess the performance and position the brand compared to your competition. You can more easily take decisions according to the main takeaways of the reports, so more quickly and smarter decisions, and to finally optimize your marketing and brand strategy. Until now, we've been focused on monitoring our client's brand, which is a good starting point. But of course, the possibilities with social media are going way beyond your own brand ecosystem. And that's when you start listening to your market more globally. And that's why we would like to go on to the second part. Social data intelligence also enables you to watch your market, to identify and analyze key opinion leaders, get marketing insights published by users themselves, detect trends and opportunities, curate content, etc. As you know, having a good reputation and brand image is mandatory, but in your crowded industry, it's better to gain a competitive advantage. It's really one of the challenges for most of the financial actors. So how can you stand out in your market? Actually, to get an edge of your competition, you need to detect trends and decode consumer insights. How do your customers and internet users react to current societal events? Who are the key drivers and influences on your industry trends? Thanks to an open listening, not only on your products, on your brand, but also on concepts and themes, our experts cater observation notes as well as dedicated dashboards on specific topics. And that's what we would like to present you in the fourth use case. As I already said, the finance industry runs at an accelerating pace. Disruption is everywhere. New joiners are really changing the rules quickly. So in order to thrive in this challenging environment, you really need to get actionable insights. Just knowing the trends isn't enough. You then need to be able to apply them in order to drive change and innovation. So in order to help several companies, finance companies in their strategic planning, we work together with Talkwalker on the design of a market insight dashboard. And that's what we would like you to present now. So I will just change my screen so that we can have an access. Damien, maybe you could present the dashboard that we designed together on finance.
Yeah, thank you. I will try to be consistent on that one. It can be quite long because we have a lot of data inside the dashboard. But yeah, as you can see, so this is an example of dashboard around sustainable finance, and so what we did is to organize the deliverable into three main categories. So you are looking at the first one, which is sustainable finance in Europe. But we also focused on the visibility of Switzerland in Europe. And in the third part, we focused on the topic sustainable finance in Switzerland. So depending on the approach and the public which is consulting the dashboard, you have three levels, and you can really get the insight you need on the scope that is interesting for you. So for these three levels of analysis, we mixed quantitative, qualitative metrics, different kind of features. So in the first one, if we have a look, so you can see that we start with quantitative metrics. We see that the volume of mention about sustainable finance over the last quarter is quite stable. We see an important decrease in the engagement, meaning that maybe the topics were not so hot at the time. When we look at the evolution, we easily see that there is one peak of conversation. So we can easily click on it to understand what happened and why this topic was a hot issue in April around sustainable finance. So it was related in that case to the new EU taxonomy. And so we can go deeper to understand, okay, we have the evolution of mention and conversation. Where are they from? So we see that it's mainly on Twitter, and that conversation are driving by the UK and France, mainly because we had some political decision in the UK at the time, and because we had some discussions from Emmanuel Macron on this topic, and also because of the new EU taxonomy. So afterwards, we can go deeper in the conversation and understand what is really speaked inside the conversation. So we have the semantic analysis, and we can see that in the theme cloud, we have a lot of mention of green finance, green investments, European Commission, and so on. And it's generally this thematic is related to sustainable finance. They are very linked, and the new taxonomy had a strong impact on the topic during the last quarter. So once we have defined where the conversation from, what is the main topic, we would like to understand concretely over the thousand of conversation, what is the impact of one topic against the other. So in order to do it, and in order to get this holistic view of the conversation, we have a feature named the conversation cluster that you can see in the screen now, which is built in on a Talkwalker AI engine. So basically, it's a specialized clustering algorithm which is able to identify text pattern. So we will take the 1,000 of conversation, and we'll see the similarity in the content, and it will allow us to group all the content in a few seconds in different group. That leads at the end to have what we call networks, and at the end for the customers, and in that case to the bank, to have very quickly insights about sustainable finance in Europe. So we can see we had 1,000 of results, but in the end on the right you have 10 topic, and you can easily see which topic is the most important. We can have different views, so you really understand what is happening and what is driving the conversations. And so what we have done is, at the end of each section, each tab, it's also to focus on the main key opinion leaders. So we can see in that case in Europe who is speaking, who is the most influent in Europe, and we have the same in the other tabs. And at the very end of the dashboard, we have a focus on the Swiss actors to understand what is the perception of Swiss actors around sustainable finance in Europe, what is discussed about Swiss actors, and what is the sentiment and so on. So we can see, as we did for the global view, the main peak of conversation. We can highlight the main topics and really quickly understand what happened. And so we just duplicated this methodology for the 3 different scope we choose to have the global overview of conversation and have a deep understanding around the sustainable finance in Europe, in Switzerland, and around the visibility of Switzerland in Europe.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Damien. So what are actually the benefits to conduct market research? Of course, results in a higher level of competitiveness thanks to the detection of new opportunities. It also reduces risks and enables you to make better informed plans and decisions to be always ahead of the competition. Last but not least, I would like to present the last use case about Customer Watch. So people often believe that Customer Watch is only to collect the negative mentions, but social data analytics and VOC can also be used to drive product and service optimization and innovation. Today, more than ever, it's important to understand consumers' reality in order to stay in sync with their expectations and better anticipate their needs. So how can you, as a brand, as a finance actor, maximize your customer experience through social listening? Here again, the answer is quite straightforward. You have to listen to them and grasp their needs. The web constitutes the biggest focus group available, so let's capitalize on it and listen to what I have to say. For this last use case, we would like to present one of our clients, which is an online bank and has several million of customers, customers who do not really follow one single life journey, but who really represent highly segmented audience groups with different needs and expectations that need to be addressed. So in order to measure how satisfied customers are and to pinpoint customers' fast-changing mindset, we had to follow all these conversations to offer, of course, at least an empowering products and services that deliver a unique and engaging experience. So Damien, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the VOC and what can be done thanks to Talkworker to understand all the conversations around client needs and expectations.
Yes. Yeah. So that's true that we, with our customers and that one particularly, we see that social listening it's no longer enough, and it's no longer enough to do social listening or research or customer experience in silos. So as Talkwalker is quite an open platform, we can easily add any kind of sources where we find conversation with clients. So basically, we did it and combined different data sources. So it can be customer service, surveys, reviews. So reviews, maybe the reviews in Google, but we have the app stores, we have Trustpilot, and a lot of different kind of review sources. In addition to publicly available data. And so the online bank gets, again, a holistic view of his brand, market, and customer perception. So yeah, for example, some interesting insights can be derived from comparing feedback from a product launch, for example, across different data sources, with customer reviews, customer support, or customer surveys. So you can see, depending on the customer journey, that the sentiment and the perception of your product or service won't be the same. So by combining all of these data, you can really compare easily on the same dashboard. For example, a new client will like this aspect of your product or service, but for another one, which is client for a long time, it can be a pain point. So yeah, While social media is quite rich, it's very rich, it's not quite rich, it's very rich source of information. Customer review and survey can also provide another side of the perception that your customers have. And that they won't share in social media, for example. So yeah, all of these sources allows now the online bank to really understand the perception on different kind of sources, direct sources to talk with the client, social media, and other content that we can find on the web.
And here on the screen, you can see an example of output of a bi-monthly report we are doing for this online bank, including different kind of sources, and of course also reviews that are that are categorized as Damien already said it, in sentiment, but also automated categories that we define together with a client to be sure that all the mentions are properly directed to the different categories. What is interesting is that you can also find many suggestions. So as I already said it's not only about negative comments, but also suggestions coming from the customers directly on social media, but of course also on reviews, etc. And it's really nurturing and feeding the marketing and innovation teams at the online bank to optimize their products. So the benefits are also quite similar. So the objective is to identify what is important to the audience, collect data on the different areas to make improvements directly related to customer feedback. So you better your customer service, and of course, finally, you generate more business. So to finish, to conclude our part of the webinar, just in a few words, knowledge is really power. Social media intelligence, when used the right way, has the potential to unlock many growth opportunities across your business, especially in the financial sector. So let's start it together. Thank you for your attention.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you very much, Damien. I think we're really good in time today, and what a great presentation. Let's head on over to our Q&A part of our webinar. We've got a couple of great questions from our audience. I'll just quickly scan through them again. How about this one? Let's start with this one. This is a great question. How do you measure your brand's health to help you decide on your future actions? What a great question. I think, Vanessa, would you like to answer this one?
Yes, pleasure. So as Damien presented it in the first part, we can get different kind of metrics through the platform. There are quantitative metrics and also qualitative metrics. So you have quantitative metrics like the number of mentions, the engagement, but also the reach, for example, the share of voice. And then you also have more qualitative metrics, like, for example, the sentiment, which is really important. And we can even go beyond with custom scores. However, these metrics, when they're alone, they won't enable the client to really position himself as a brand. So what is important here is to always integrate two different notions, dimensions. The first one is to have a competitive benchmark. So for example, these metrics are interesting if you can compare them to the same metrics of your competitors. So you will really be able to position yourself. And of course, the other one is to follow these metrics on a timeline. So of course, to see the evolution of your brand image. And it's only by doing this, by comparing your metrics to the ones of your competitors, but also by following these metrics on the long term, that you will really be able to see what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and actually to make decisions to optimize it.
Super, great stuff. Thank you very much for that, Vanessa.
You're welcome.
I have another question here, which came from the audience. How can you integrate social data into customer experience projects? And what are the pain points? This is also a really good one. I think this is more directed towards Damien. Would you like to answer this one, Damien?
Yes, of course. So yeah, no, the pain point definitely will be to know how to start and what to look for with this huge amount of data. So that's why we have a proven framework to help our customers to get the most out the platform and the conversation online. But yeah, how we can use social insight into customer experience projects. So it's quite challenging to understand and to measure the success of a brand content strategy, for example, and understand the perception of your customers in your market. So as said Vanessa, first, what we must do is to listen and to understand, for example, to respond when there is a product launch, understand the customer's motivation to buy, find new selling arguments from their feedback. And so that's why it's interesting to have first a wide coverage of media, to have social, be able to categorize data, to assess the sentiment very quickly, but also to have reviews, to be able to connect some internal tools, for example, and have a full view on the conversations that you can have with your customers. After, it's also very important to measure conversation to identify the new usages, for example, of products, new markets, the perception of your competitors, strengths and weaknesses, some element like that can be local, regional, global. And at the end, you can also identify audience segments and deep dive into this their interest. So all of this information help you to take a business decision, to adapt your communication, your messages, the media you are using, maybe your influencer strategy, and so on. And so all these actions will impact your efficiency on your communication on social media and web. So we have So just maybe to sum up, but we have a framework to help integrating this kind of social insight into sales projects at different levels. It can be from R&D process to a go-to-market project, or for a very launch product for which you want to earn market share, for example.
Great. Well, fantastic. Well, this is a fun and insightful way to spend the lunch hour. Thank you again to Vanessa and Damien for sharing their insights and firsthand experience on social media listening in the financial sector. Thank you to everyone who participated today. I hope your lunch at your desks was an inspiring one. If you have any other questions, feel free to get in touch with us. Our email address is chinfo@datawords.com. We'll get back to you shortly on regarding to any of your questions you have specifically for your company or your product, your brand. We will send you a copy of the recording of this webinar as well as the deck. And thank you again for joining us today. I hope you have a great afternoon and hope to see you again. Have a nice afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.